At 95, Clint Eastwood finally tells the truth about Rob Reiner. Clint Eastwood, born Clinton Eastwood Jr., came into the world on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco, California, at the height of the Great Depression. His childhood was shaped by constant relocation, as his family moved throughout California in search of work. This unsettled upbringing fostered a strong sense of independence in Eastwood, while also encouraging an emotional restraint that would remain with him throughout his life. From an early age, Eastwood was reserved and introspective, preferring observation over conversation. These qualities later became defining features of his on-screen presence. Music played an important role in his formative years, particularly jazz and piano, which helped develop his sensitivity to rhythm, atmosphere, and subtlety, elements that would later influence his approach to filmmaking. After finishing high school, Eastwood did not immediately pursue a career in entertainment. Instead, he worked a range of jobs, including lifeguard, lumberjack, and gas station attendant. These experiences kept him grounded in working-class realities and instilled in him a deep respect for perseverance and everyday labor. His entry into acting was gradual and uncertain, emerging only after his discharge from the U.S. Army, when he began exploring opportunities in Hollywood. The early stage of Eastwood's acting career was marked by rejection and instability. In the mid-1950s, he signed with Universal Pictures but was eventually dropped after a series of minor roles failed to impress studio executives, who criticized his appearance, voice, and perceived lack of screen presence. Rather than discouraging him, these setbacks strengthened his determination. Eastwood continued studying acting, accepting small parts, and patiently waiting for a chance that would allow him to develop on his own terms rather than conform to industry expectations. That long-awaited breakthrough arrived in 1959 with the television series Rawhide. Cast as Rowdy Yates, Eastwood secured consistent work and national exposure over the course of 8 seasons. While the role brought him financial security and public recognition, it also left him artistically confined. Seeking deeper and more challenging material, Eastwood made a bold decision, walking away from American television to pursue work in Italian cinema, a gamble that would ultimately reshape both his life and the film industry. In the mid-1960s, Eastwood accepted a relatively low-paying role in director Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. These films radically transformed the Western genre and introduced Eastwood's now legendary man with no name. The character was spare in dialogue, morally ambiguous, and defined by a steady gaze and quiet intensity that communicated more than words ever could. Through this performance, Eastwood redefined on-screen masculinity. He was not expressive or flamboyant. His authority came from stillness, restraint, and suggestion. The trilogy's success elevated him to international stardom and permanently shifted the visual style and tone of Western films. Just as importantly, it gave Eastwood something he had long lacked: control. Control over his roles, his creative direction, and his professional independence. Upon returning to Hollywood in the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, Eastwood became one of the most reliable box office stars in the industry. Films such as Dirty Harry solidified his image as a hard-edged, uncompromising agent of justice. The character of Harry Callahan ignited widespread controversy, hailed by some as an expression of public anger over rising crime, and condemned by others as a symbol of authoritarian excess. Eastwood consistently rejected narrow interpretations of his work, emphasizing that his characters were meant to embody moral ambiguity rather than political ideology. During this era, he displayed notable range, moving fluidly between westerns, action films, thrillers, romantic dramas, and comedies. Titles such as Play Misty for Me, High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Escape from Alcatraz highlighted both his versatility and his increasing assurance behind the camera. Eastwood was no longer simply performing. He was observing, refining his craft, and quietly preparing for a major evolution in his career. As a director, Eastwood developed a clear and disciplined style, marked by efficiency, emotional restraint, and a strong respect for actors. He favored few takes, natural lighting, and subtle storytelling, allowing scenes to unfold without unnecessary embellishment. His films repeatedly returned to themes of aging, remorse, redemption, violence, and moral consequence, subjects rarely explored with such depth in mainstream cinema. This phase of his career reached a defining moment with Unforgiven, 1992, a revisionist western that stripped away long-standing myths of heroism and exposed the true cost of violence. The film earned Eastwood Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture, firmly confirming his place among the leading filmmakers of his generation. He followed this success with a series of highly regarded films, including Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, Changeling, and American Sniper. His recognition reached far beyond Hollywood. Eastwood received 3 César Awards, one of Europe's most prestigious film honors, reflecting the respect he commands within the international film community. He was also presented with the American Film Institute's Life Achievement Award in acknowledgement of his lasting influence on American cinema. In 2000, Eastwood's global reputation was further solidified when the Venice Film Festival honored him with the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, one of the highest awards in world cinema. The recognition celebrated a body of work defined by moral complexity, restraint, and a distinctive directorial voice. France has also honored Eastwood with its highest civilian distinctions. In 1994, he was named a Commander of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres for his contributions to the arts. In 2007, he received the Legion of Honor, France's most prestigious decoration. Together, these honors reflect an artist whose influence extends beyond any single nation or era. Clint Eastwood's marriage to Margaret "Maggie" Neville Johnson was the longest and most complex relationship of his life. They met in 1953, when Eastwood was still struggling and working various jobs, including lifeguard and laborer, while pursuing acting with little success. Maggie Johnson provided stability during a time when his future remained uncertain. They married on December 19, 1953, beginning a partnership that would last for more than 30 years. In the early stage of their marriage, Eastwood's career progressed slowly, and financial uncertainty was a persistent reality. During this time, Maggie played a vital role, offering steady emotional support as Eastwood faced repeated professional disappointments. When Eastwood finally broke through with the television series Rawhide between 1959 and 1965, their lives changed significantly. Success brought money, recognition, and new opportunities, but it also introduced pressures that would challenge their marriage for years. As Eastwood's fame expanded through his roles in Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy and later as Inspector Harry Callahan in the Dirty Harry films, his demanding schedule and growing independence gradually reshaped their relationship. Maggie largely stayed away from the Hollywood spotlight, choosing privacy and a quieter domestic life. The contrast between Eastwood's public image and Maggie's reserved nature became increasingly apparent over time. Their marriage was marked by extended separations and well-documented infidelities, which Eastwood would later acknowledge openly. Despite these challenges, the couple remained legally married for decades, reflecting the emotional complexity of their bond and a shared sense of responsibility. Together, they had 2 children, Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, who went on to become a successful jazz musician, and Allison Eastwood, born in 1972, who pursued careers in acting and filmmaking. Maggie's commitment to her children and her efforts to preserve a sense of family stability were central to her role during this period. In 1978, after 25 years of marriage, Maggie and Clint formally separated, though their divorce was not finalized until 1984. The long delay between separation and divorce highlighted how deeply intertwined their personal lives and finances had become. When the divorce was finalized, it ranked among the most costly settlements in Hollywood at the time, reflecting both Eastwood's immense success and Maggie's long-standing role during his rise to fame. Although their marriage eventually ended, Maggie Johnson remains a foundational figure in Clint Eastwood's personal history. She was present before the fame, endured its pressures, and raised their children largely removed from Hollywood's excess. Their relationship, though flawed, shaped Eastwood's understanding of family, responsibility, and the personal cost of ambition. At 95, Clint Eastwood speaks with a clarity that comes only after a full creative life, free from the need to seek approval. Looking back on more than 70 years in Hollywood, Eastwood reflects not only on his own journey, but on how the industry itself has changed and on the figures who have come to represent those shifts. When asked about Rob Reiner, he speaks without resentment or hostility. His words are calm, reflective, and grounded in the belief that Hollywood has gradually moved away from its original purpose, telling stories meant to connect people rather than divide them. "I've never had an issue with Rob as a filmmaker," Eastwood says. "He's talented. You don't make the films he's made without a real sense of character and timing." Eastwood openly recognizes Reiner's accomplishments, especially his earlier films, which were defined by warmth, humor, and a strong sense of humanity. To Eastwood, those works belong to a period when Hollywood placed greater value on craftsmanship and less on ideological messaging. What concerns him now is not only Reiner's evolution, but the broader cultural shift surrounding him. "At some point, the industry stopped being about curiosity," Eastwood reflects. "It became about certainty, and certainty is dangerous in art." In his view, Reiner has come to symbolize a segment of Hollywood that no longer allows room for disagreement, confusing moral conviction with moral superiority. Eastwood contrasts this outlook with his own philosophy, both as a filmmaker and as a public figure. "I never thought my job was to tell people what to think," he says. "My job was to show people who they are." He explains that even his most controversial films were never intended to lecture audiences, but to invite reflection. Whether working in westerns, war films, or intimate character dramas, Eastwood says he trusted viewers to reach their own conclusions. To Eastwood, the real difference between himself and Reiner is philosophical rather than political. "Rob wants to win arguments," he says. "I want to ask questions." He recalls a time when Hollywood thrived on creative tension, when artists with very different worldviews could collaborate without demanding ideological agreement. That spirit, Eastwood believes, has largely faded. "There used to be a time when you could disagree and still respect one another," he says. "Now disagreement is treated like a moral failing." He suggests that Reiner's vocal activism reflects a wider trend in which entertainers confuse loudness with virtue. For Eastwood, moral certainty shuts doors that storytelling should leave open. He is careful not to portray himself as a victim. "Nobody's silencing me," Eastwood says. "I've said what I needed to say." What worries him instead is a younger generation of filmmakers who feel compelled to align with accepted viewpoints. "They're afraid to be honest," he says. "And fear has never produced good art." When asked whether Reiner understands this criticism, Eastwood pauses. "I don't know," he admits. "People hear what they want to hear." He stresses that his comments are not personal attacks, but reflections on a system that rewards outrage over insight. "Rob didn't create that system," Eastwood says, "but he's comfortable within it." At 95, Eastwood shows no interest in settling old scores. His tone remains steady and detached. "Life's too short to hold grudges," he says. What matters to him now is legacy, not awards or box office success, but the freedom to tell stories honestly. "I'd rather make a film that challenges people than one that tells them they're flawless." In the end, Eastwood's truth about Rob Reiner is less a revelation than a quiet expression of regret. It reflects the sadness of an artist witnessing an industry abandon curiosity in favor of conformity. "Hollywood was once a home for outsiders," Eastwood says. "Now it's a place where everyone is trying to prove they belong on the inside." For Clint Eastwood, that shift matters far more than any individual name.